Welcome to Boring News from Not Boring, where we bring you the news as Polymarket sees it. I'm your host, Packy McCormick's voice, and my job is to put my mouth where your money is. Today is December 9th, 2024. Here's a quick roundup of today's stories. The Federal Reserve is expected to cut rates by 25 basis points at its December 17th through 18 meeting, with market odds at around 87% due to cooling inflation and softening labor data. A federal court upheld a TikTok ban by January 19, 2025, unless ByteDance sells the app, with odds for this happening standing at around 36%. TikTok plans to appeal the court's decision. Israeli forces crossed into Syria's demilitarized zone for the first time since 1973, targeting weapons depots after Assad's regime collapsed. Odds have risen to about 78% for an Israeli invasion by December 31st, 2024. Now let's hit today's stories. The Federal Reserve's upcoming interest rate decision on December 17th, 18 is causing a stir on Polymarket. With nearly $30 million of volume, there's an 87% chance of a 25 basis point cut. This follows the Fed's easing cycle, which began in September 2024. Recent comments from Fed Governor Christopher Waller suggest support for a December cut, especially with recent data showing lower inflation and a slight rise in unemployment. The Fed's December decision is part of a broader policy shift that started in March 2022. Back then, the Fed was hiking rates to combat inflation, reaching the highest levels in 2 decades. Since September 2024, there's been a change with a 50 basis point cut, followed by a 25 basis point cut in November. Inflation is now closer to the Fed's 2% target, with the October rate at 2.6%. The Federal Reserve is signaling a likely rate cut at its December meeting. Fed Governor Waller leans toward this cut, pending any surprising data. Inflation continues its decline, and the labor market shows softening signs. An upcoming Consumer Price Index report showing a 2.7% increase remains crucial. We'll keep an eye out for this one. Let's move on to the next story. A federal appeals court has upheld a law that might ban TikTok in the U.S. by January 19, 2025. The ruling requires ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to sell the app or face a nationwide ban. This decision was made by a panel of judges from the D.C. Circuit, affirming legislation signed by President Biden. TikTok, which boasts 170 million American users, plans to appeal to the courts. They argue the law relies on flawed data and infringes on constitutional rights. The court acknowledged no direct evidence of Chinese manipulation in the U.S., but cited content changes in other regions as reason enough for the law. The January 19th deadline is notable, just before President-elect Trump's inauguration. Trump initially supported, but now opposes the ban, which adds another layer of complexity. This ruling led to a surge in market activity. On Polymarket, the trading volume is about $630,000 total, and with about $350,000 in the last 24 hours, and the odds are 36% for a ban and 64% against it before May 2025, showing traders are leaning towards no ban and are actively repositioning due to this pivotal court decision and Trump's opposition. Let's move on to our last story. Israeli forces have crossed into Syria beyond the demilitarized zone for the first time since 1973. This follows the sudden collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Prime Minister Netanyahu announced Israel's control of the buffer zone, claiming the 1974 ceasefire agreement is now void. Israeli military operations include airstrikes on weapons depots near Damascus, targeting chemical weapons to keep them from rebel hands. Ground forces have entered the Quneitra governorate, imposing curfews on 5 Syrian villages. This intervention marks a significant change, with Assad fleeing to Russia as opposition forces led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham take control of Damascus. The market has seen a dramatic surge following these events. Odds have risen to around 77% for an Israeli invasion by December 31st, 2024, with a trading volume of 1.65 million and a 24-hour volume of around 1 million. Historically, Israel-Syria tensions date back to the 1967 Six-Day War and the 1973 October War. Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights in 1981 wasn't internationally recognized until 2019 by the U.S. For decades, Israel limited its actions to covert operations, but now it's overtly in Syrian territory. The world is watching closely as the situation unfolds. Each of the stories we covered today is ongoing and may change dramatically. For updates and detailed odds, head to polymarket.com. That's all the news that's fit to predict. This is me, Packy McCormick's voice, signing off. May the odds be ever in your favor.